In April 1933, Americans wake up to a shocking new reality. Owning gold had suddenly become a federal crime. Within just 30 days, the government seized more than 3,600 tons of it. So, how and why did this happen? Before 1933, America ran on a system called the gold standard. It was simple. Every dollar in circulation had to be backed by real gold stored in the US Treasury. Since 1879, this system made people trust the currency because they knew their money represented something tangible. For most families, gold was security. Many kept gold coins, small bars, or inherited pieces from earlier generations, especially those tied to the California gold rush. But everything changed after the 1929 stock market crash. The economy collapsed, banks failed, millions lost their jobs. As fear spread, people rushed to withdraw their money and convert it into gold. This created a dangerous situation. Every time people pulled out gold, the Federal Reserve's reserves shrank. By 1933, the country was running critically low. This posed a huge problem. Because of the gold standard, the government couldn't print more money to stimulate the economy unless it had enough gold to back it. The country was trapped by its own financial system at the worst possible time. By early 1933, bank runs were happening everywhere. People hid gold at home, others buried to keep it safe. Trust in the banking system had completely collapsed. The government knew the economy couldn't recover unless it regained control of the nation's gold supply. And that set the stage for one of the most controversial actions in American history, the forced confiscation of privately owned gold. On April 5, 1933, President Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102. This decision stunned the entire nation. With one signature, every American was ordered to turn in their gold coins, gold bullion, and gold certificates within just 25 days. The message was clear: keep only a tiny amount if you needed it for work or had it as jewelry as a rare collectible. Everything else had to go straight to the banks. There was no negotiation, no market price, and no choice. The government would pay $20.67 per ounce, a fixed rate that people had no power to argue with, and refusing wasn't an option. Violating the order would cost you a $10,000 fine, which was around 6 years of average salary, or even 10 years in prison. To make the process smoother and to calm public anger, the government launched a nationwide propaganda campaign. Posters, radio announcements, and newspaper ads pushed the idea that surrendering gold was a patriotic duty. They said giving up gold would save the American economy and help end the Depression. Banks became collection centers. Across the country, people lined up with small bags, boxes, or envelopes, holding family savings they trusted for generations. Some were confused, some were angry, and many simply felt helpless. But in the end, the results were massive. The government collected about 3,600 tons of gold from individuals, but also from corporations and banks that had no choice but to comply. It was one of the largest forced wealth transfers in US history. What made Executive Order 6102 even more shocking was the scale of what followed. Americans unknowingly became part of the largest government seizure of wealth in US history. The gold that families handed over was the savings of multiple generations, often passed down from parents and grandparents who had lived through earlier crises. Much of this gold could be traced back to the California gold rush, meaning families were surrendering pieces of their own history. To understand how massive this seizure was, look at the numbers. The government gathered around 3,600 tons of gold. That's more gold than modern China holds in its official reserves. At today's prices, it would be worth nearly $395 billion. With that kind of money, you could build dozens of nuclear power plants, buy entire islands, or fund some of the largest real estate projects in the world. But instead, Americans received paper dollars that immediately began losing value. Some people refused to give in quietly. One of the most famous cases was businessman Frederick Barber Campbell. He challenged the government, arguing that forcing citizens to surrender gold violated the Fifth Amendment, the right to keep private property. But the courts didn't agree. The Supreme Court ruled that the government had the authority to regulate and even confiscate gold during national emergencies. The FBI spent years hunting down people suspected of hoarding. Agents raided homes, questioned families, and even tracked down unusual coin sales. A few people were arrested. Many more hid their gold forever, buried coins and lost stashes that are not found yet. By the time it was over, Americans had lost trust. By the start of 1934, the government had control of almost all the gold in America, but the story didn't end there. On January 30, 1934, President Roosevelt took the next major step by signing the Gold Reserve Act. This law made the government's power over gold absolute. Every ounce of gold previously held by the Federal Reserve was officially transferred to the U.S. Treasury, giving Washington full ownership of the nation's entire gold supply. But the most controversial move came right after. Once all the gold was safely in government hands, Roosevelt changed the official price of gold from $20.67 per ounce to $35 per ounce. That's almost a 70% increase. Overnight, the government made an insane profit of about $2.8 billion. The amount was equal to nearly half of the entire federal budget that year. Ordinary Americans who had just turned in their gold for the old price couldn't do anything but watch. They got paper dollars while the government pocketed the gains. The Gold Reserve Act also ended the public's ability to exchange dollars for gold. The gold standard, the system that defined American money for over 50 years, was effectively dead. With gold no longer limiting the supply of money, the government could print more money to fight the Depression. Supporters argued this gave the economy room to breathe. Critics said it was the biggest betrayal of financial trust in U.S. history. Either way, the change was permanent. The dollar people used every day no longer represented gold stored in a vault. It was now backed entirely by the government's promise. And for many Americans, this was the moment they realized how much power Washington had gained and how much control the public had lost. Once the government controlled the nation's gold, it needed a place secure enough to store it. That led to the creation of one of the most famous and mysterious facilities in the world, the U.S. Bullion Depository at Fort Knox, Kentucky. Construction began in 1936, and from the start, the goal was to build a fortress capable of protecting billions of dollars worth of gold from anything, including war, theft, or national disaster. Fort Knox was designed with extreme security in mind. Its walls are made of thick layers of concrete and granite. The vault door weighs about 20 tons, operated with a complex lock for which no one knew the full combination. The area around it was once lined with fences, guards, minefields, and armed patrols. Over time, the facility added even more security systems, from advanced alarms to security technology that remains classified. By 1941, most of America's gold reserves had been transferred to Fort Knox. Trains carrying sealed containers of gold were escorted under heavy military protection. For decades, the vault has also stored priceless documents, foreign reserves during wartime, and even the original Declaration of Independence at one point. Today, Fort Knox stands as a symbol of American power and secrecy. Very few people have ever been inside, and public audits are rare, which has only fueled speculation and conspiracy theories. The aftermath of the 1933 gold seizure left the country divided. Economists still argue about whether confiscating gold truly helped the economy recover, or if it simply gave the government more power at the expense of ordinary citizens. Supporters claim the move allowed the government to increase the money supply, fight deflation, and restart economic growth. But critics say the cost was too high. Millions of Americans lost wealth they had saved for years, and many believe they were never fairly compensated. Beyond the economic debates, the moral impact was even deeper. Families felt betrayed. People questioned whether their money, property, or savings could ever be truly safe. The government had crossed a line that many thought was untouchable, taking private wealth during a time of fear. The 1933 gold confiscation reshaped the nation's financial system, destroyed the gold standard, and expanded government power in ways people never expected. It also left behind a trail of questions about fairness, trust, and the limits of authority. As we look back, this event reminds us how fragile economic security can be and how important it is to understand the decisions made during times of crisis.